This is Coda Radio, episode 51 for May 27th, 2013. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. We streamed this episode live Monday morning over at jblive.tv. This episode's brought to you by GoDaddy.com. I'll tell you more about them as the show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week for 51 weeks in a row is our excellent host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Oh boy!
It's a Michael.
It's a Luigi. It's Luigi.
No, I think that's more of a Mickey Mouse, actually.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, I think I got a little Mickey Mouse in there.
Well, hey, it's a holiday, right? I am entitled to get my voices wrong on a holiday.
It's a holiday. You can do whatever you want. If you want to crack open a beer during this episode and kick back.
I do. I'm celebrating, by the way, Happy Memorial Day to anyone who served or just anyone who is taking the holiday like I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am celebrating this very American holiday with a Corona, which is La Cerveza Más Fina, according to the bottle.
Well, isn't that actually made by an American company, though?
I think it's made, yeah, they are an American company, but they make it in Mexico.
Good. Well, so, okay. Well, all right. Well,
That's what it says. Wait.
At least we showed up. Maybe your beer might not be the most patriotic beer, but...
Well, I have a case of Sam Adams. Would that have been better?
Well, we'll just keep an eye on it.
Well, the problem is the double agent IPA, so I'm not sure if that would be appropriate.
Ooh.
A little intrigue, right?
I like the name. Yeah.
It's really good, actually.
Well, I think, we're close to the 1 year mark, as next week will be episode 52, and it being a holiday, I think we kind of wanted to have an uplifting episode. Something to really cheer us all up.
Yes, because last week was a tearjerker.
Yeah, and the week before.
Yeah, and the week before that, too, I'm sure.
I can't help it. I'm sorry. I think it was all my fault. But I'm better now. I'm back. And
well, you do hate Google. I mean, we've proven this time and again.
Yeah, so I did get a lot of, speaking of feedback, I did get a lot of, messages into that regard. And I don't know. Are we going to touch on some of that in the feedback?
No, because I got a lot of the why does Chris hate Google so much, and I was just like, I don't think he does.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. And some people, basically, my argument was, just a really quick recap, was I think Google has more responsibility in terms of pushing device manufacturers to get old versions of Android patched, at least for security. Even if it's not a new version of the OS, at least backport fixes. And other people, essentially, the counter argument comes down to, just as Linus Torvalds has no responsibility for what Ubuntu ships, Google has no responsibility for what Samsung ships. I think that's an interesting argument to be made. I don't know if I completely agree, and also I still think there's some moral issues to be discussed there, but we'll leave that for episode 50. If you guys missed that discussion, go catch episode 50.
Yeah, it was a pretty good discussion, but I feel like we shouldn't beat that horse anymore.
I agree. We'll move on. We'll move on to greener pastures this week. Should we start with Oded? Is that how you say his name? What do you think?
Yeah, but I just realized he wrote in about Google.
Oh.
Whoops.
All right, well, so, after Oded. How about after that?
Oded.
Yeah,
then we're moving on.
We're clear.
That's it.
We're clear.
All right. Done.
Okay. You want me to read it here? You want me to actually read this thing here? It says the whole point of the Oracle Google suit was the Oracle was I think it means pissed, that Google didn't use their VM, but instead wrote their own VM based on the Open Java language specification. So given that I don't see the Java language specification being closed anytime soon, and that Google are unlikely to drop their Dalvik implementation, especially after basically getting a soft slap on the wrist in the courts, TechCrunch's Java question was stupid. Larry Page effed up by not calling them out. Maybe it's just because he was sick, and you guys should have picked up on this. Interesting.
Right, so first point, keep the emails family friendly.
Right. It does make it easier to read on air.
Yes. Second point, I think you're conflating a few things. The Java specifications, public, whatever, you're right. But the license doesn't allow you to do VMs that aren't compatible with the basic specification. That's what Oracle was suing them for, because Dalvik was too different. Whether they're going to just be able to do it defiantly and not pay, or not do something to be in compliance, right. That's not how. Maybe they could, but that's not how a several billion-dollar company would behave, because there's a lot of risk. especially since even though they didn't get fined a lot, they did lose the case. So
And yeah,
the
there's the
record is that
precedent that sets.
the record is that they violated the license, and Davlik does violate the license according to the court. Even though it was a small fine, it was a fine. So there's no. I mean, yes, you're right. Java's not going to go away in Android, but they're probably going to wheelbarrow some money, right? I mean, oh, it's
I think that's what's more likely to happen.
yeah,
I think it's likely not to be an issue for years,
right.
and then by the time it is an issue, it'll be so obvious that Google is in a position of industry dominance that Oracle they'll just sign up with a deal. I mean, right now that seems like because they were just butting heads, like that's not going to happen. But in a few years' time, this industry moves fast. That's going to seem like an old issue that's been resolved, and Oracle's just going to want to make a buck off the money train that is Android.
Yeah, and one thing is Android has kept Java from becoming, crufty, and it's kept it somewhat sexy. Because think about it, on the front end, without Android, are you really using Java? Probably not, right? It's kind of boring, kind of enterprisey.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if Oracle doesn't want to end that, and they just want a cut.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, like the carriers, they just want a cut.
Everybody just wants their piece of the action.
Everybody wants a piece of the pie.
Yep. All right. How about HTML5?
Yes.
Speaking of these kinds of things.
Mike, i.e. not me, is developing an HTML5 tool and asked if we feel like the Mac App Store is more profitable than both the Chrome Web Store and the WinRT Store combined. I leave this to Chris.
Boy, how could I know? I have no idea what those other stores generate. However, I know people who... Actually, let's see. I know 3 people who make their entire living just off of App Store sales from iOS and the Mac App Store. So that's where all of their revenue comes from, and they're in all the other app stores as well. I don't know about our WinRT, and they don't make nearly the same amount. Now, does that mean those app stores are more profitable than other app stores, or does it just mean those particular apps do better in the app store? I think that's more likely the case. I think each app store has probably different performer categories, so that's more what it matters a little more.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, the Chrome Web Store has historically been a difficult place to be, I can tell you from experience.
I like the idea of...
I like the idea, but people aren't quite ready to pay for full-on web apps in the browser.
I agree.
Yeah. WinRT is so new, and it hasn't exactly had the sales. The other thing is, we've had some developers on the Apple platform come forward with numbers. We've had some in Ubuntu. No one so far has done that on Chrome or Windows. So we don't know what the numbers...
That would be good to get a data if anybody out there wants to even
share.
Anonymously share.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that, the numbers have been good on all those platforms. I mean, Ubuntu in particular, if you go back a few weeks, was downright depressing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was it? $1,000 or something was the top app in the store.
Yeah, and I don't even think they broke 1,000 sales combined.
It was.
Yeah.
But Zane in the chat room is going to change all that.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. He wrote an app called Spindle that is I would call it a day planner, but I think he'd punch me in the throat.
Ouch. Is it more like a life organizer?
Like a productivity tool.
I like that he made a video. That's a nice touch.
Love the video. He calls it the Hamburger Project. The goal is to make $43 plus, I think it's $3 or $4, so he can A, cover his costs, B, buy a hamburger.
Very
interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
So he is selling this exclusively on the Ubuntu Software Center. He does share the source code. So Zane, I'm curious how you think that's going to go. But it's a nice looking tool, very Ubuntu focused, and in fact, my understanding is it only works on Ubuntu.
Wow.
Right now, I mean,
why is that? Do you know?
Because Zane is a wise and smart person.
Wow.
And he no, too much.
I'm an Arch user now.
I didn't even say hippies yet. You didn't even let me get to calling you hippies.
This offends me now as an Arch user because of how do I install this on my? Is it in the Arch user repository? I don't think so.
All right, take off the tie-dye t-shirt. Go get a button-down shirt, and let's all go run Ubuntu together.
You know what I think? Sometimes, I don't know. You feel a little.
It's negative in the freedom dimension,
but it's all right. I mean, I don't begrudge Zane. I mean, see where it works.
No, it is actually. I mean, for a Linux app, it's a very good looking tool. Yes, I am trolling you people today.
Yeah, you are.
It's a holiday. I'm off.
Yeah, one beer in you, and you just start trolling people.
Oh, so Zane is actually adding the chat. So yeah, the binary is Ubuntu, but I guess if you compile it on a different distro,
so then it probably is in the Arch user repository.
It's written in Python. What's wrong with you?
Well,
yeah, see, I have to just offend. No, it looks really nice, and if you have $2.99, I suggest you go buy it.
There you go. Good work, Zane. Go check out Spindle, Spindl.
And his website is pretty.
Yeah, I like that. And we've always wondered if you really went in full chips on Ubuntu and really pushed for Ubuntu integration, really pushed for App Store placement, would maybe that change the tide on sales?
Look at this. Doesn't even need to be compiled. I don't know what kind of magic he's using. So I haven't looked at the source code. I just looked at the binary because I can tell you that it works in VMware.
I wanted to make one last point on the
Sure.
App Store thing, and this is a huge advantage that Apple has and one that Google is building towards. And I don't know where Microsoft is at. Maybe with Xbox Live they have a good foothold, but one of the things Apple talks about is the massive amount of active credit cards they have associated with with iTunes accounts. And the nice thing about that is, the reason why I want to underscore that is because there still really is really no matched ease of use buying as in that iOS App Store out of the gate nailed that push to install, just go binge app by process. And I think you see stores where there's a little bit, just even a tiny bit more barrier, like you need to have Google Wallet set up. I think you see a dramatic drop off in people's willingness to purchase.
Well, I have to say the flow. I mean, you brought up Google. So again, guys, aim your hate mail to Chris at Jupiter Broadcasting.
I was just comparing to the Chrome and web apps where it's tied to Google Wallet.
Have you used the new Android App Store?
You mean just the one that's on current
Android?
Yeah,
the one since they redesigned it.
Oh yeah. Well, they redesign it often, but yeah, I've got.
It's a lot better, right?
Yeah,
the purchasing flow is not as bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for me, because I'm set up with Google Wallet and all that stuff, it's totally no problem. But what I'm saying is that there's more people who have credit cards attached to iTunes accounts than there are people who have Google Wallets so far. But I'm sure Google's going to change that with everybody getting on Android and all that stuff. And the other problem is the vast majority, I guess, and it's just from what I'm reading, a large majority of Google Wallet accounts are set up, but they don't actually have any active credit cards attached to them.
Well, let's see. I mean, they're moving into music and movies with all access.
It's going to change. So it's totally.
I think that's going to be a problem of the past. But
it's something that app stores. It's a factor in the overall profitability of an app store.
I mean, for the Chrome Web Store, for sure, that's an issue.
Right.
And then, so the fun fact, the WinRT store is your Xbox Live account. So if you've ever bought anything,
so then,
they have your credit card already.
All right.
But,
so
or your PayPal, which makes a lot more sense. I don't know why everybody just doesn't use PayPal.
Bitcoin. So Matt writes in and asks what we think of Openshift versus Heroku, and if we think Google is likely to kill Go.
So this was actually interesting to me because I'm currently evaluating Openshift after I got 30 emails from the listeners telling me that I could have run Java Play on Openshift.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah. Excuse my coughing. Openshift seems fine. Heroku is very good at what it does. I think it depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you're doing a Rails app, Heroku is probably going to be the path of least resistance. But if you like Red Hat, if you kind of want to... One thing I like about Openshift is you can create it in their web client. You create, let's say a Django app, and then you download the Git project all configured for you with everything.
Ooh.
So you don't even have to play with setting up config files or anything like that. Huh. But they are a little, I'd say less limited. Like, for instance, you can do Java Play, but there's not a pre-configured Java Play project as there is the pre-configured Django one.
So a little more time.
A little more time, a little more work. But it's pricing-wise, I mean, all these pricing schemes are a little complicated, and you're going to have to figure out what's best for your project.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, I mean, because what's cheap for you and cheap for me might be very different depending on what we're each doing. So your second question, I don't think Google's ever going to kill Go.
No, I don't think so. Didn't they even give it a little more attention at
They did, and also they're using it heavily on their own because they need performance out of their servers.
Yeah, and I was just demoing on 2 episodes ago now of the Linux Action Show Docker, which is written with Google Go, and it's very nice. And they seem to be
Google Go's, the people I know who use it love it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They seem to be really into it.
Yeah. I mean, not many people use it, but...
Yeah.
No, that doesn't make it bad. It's just...
No, in fact, I know what you mean, though, because the fact that they were even talking about the fact that they wrote it in Go was because people thought it was odd. Oh, you wrote that in Go, really? And then they, were prompted, we love writing in Go. So,
But you know what? Go feels like Objective-C used to be to me. There are very few people who wrote it, but the people who wrote it really liked it. Yeah.
Way of the future. All right, well, Tron D asks if he should use C or C++ for an open source library he's writing. What do you think?
Whatever you know better.
No, good answer.
So I actually included this question only to say, because we do get a lot of these, if it's language A or language B and there's no obvious reason why one is better, it's always whichever you know better.
Right. And if course, what if you're submitting a library or something to an existing project, well, then go with what they're using. But otherwise, why would you not just use what you? I mean, that just seems obvious, like the obvious choice. And I guess people, you know what it is. And I read this article this weekend, Too Scared to Code. It was linked in our Coder Radio subreddit, and the guy goes on to talk about how like all of the choices about design patterns, code architecture, maintainability. He says it just kills my motivation, kills my output, and I think he's stuck. I think he's stuck in that. Tron D is stuck in that same spot. So,
whatever you know better, whatever you find more enjoyable, I would just do that.
Very good. And it's a good. Thanks. By the way, everybody. Thanks for people who've joined our coderradio.reddit.com, where you can submit links or discussion threads to the show. All right, well, Michael bought a year of GoDaddy using our code and wonders what PHP/MVC framework he should try. I'm assuming this isn't you.
This is not me. It would never be PHP.
Oh, gosh, Drollin.
I know someone who uses Cake PHP and swears by it. So check that out. However, there are literally hundreds of PHP frameworks. Google around. I know Cake is one of the more popular ones. Very Rails inspired if you're looking for MVC.
Next email comes from Chris, not me. Asks if we think the Xbox One will have an XNA-like SDK.
No.
Ouch.
Well, we talked about this. They officially killed XNA.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So.
Although sometimes they kill stuff to only bring it back later as something else with a more limited feature set.
Grey Wolf points out he's more of a PHP guy than me. Cake PHP has some security issues. So do something else if that's true.
There was one that was it's Google related though.
No, it's okay. We know how you feel about Google. It's okay, Chris. This is a safe space.
Oh, well, I just wanted to cover it because it was, I wanted to thank our subreddit. So it was submitted by Monster Cameron in the Coder Radio subreddit. He says updates don't really matter very much anymore for Android. Maybe I'm and we're not going to talk about Google. Maybe I'm misrepresenting what Chris Lass went on a rant about how Google didn't fix the update issue. But when you think about it, they kind of have. Google Play Services is a package that is revved via the Play Store. This is like .NET or GTK, where the OS doesn't really matter anymore. Google can update the core of Android independently of the OS, unlike before, when it had access to the latest APIs. You would have to install a later version of Android to get access to those APIs. This means that the app compatibility should go up. Even Gingerbread can be compatible with Jelly Bean. The only issue left is security updates, and that's not Google's responsibility. It's the manufacturers. That was a good. I thought his post there was a decent summary of a lot of the sense we got. I think what it is I'm talking to the wrong crowd. If I was on the TechSnap program, I think there really wouldn't be any debate with what I'm saying, because I'm talking about security and patching the core OS.
I think for this crowd and for me in particular it's just really frustrating when the APIs don't work the right way.
That's the part that the developers care about.
Yeah.
And that, is the problem you see. And as a sysadmin, the problem I see is the exploit in my pocket. And that's why it's like, okay, great, they fixed like half the problem. And I totally see where everybody's coming from. And really, it really should be up to the mobile phone vendors to get off their butts.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to go back to this. I don't actually agree with that. I think it's Google's fault and Google's responsibility.
Kapow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into our main topics, which I am really, really looking forward to today, because somebody over there on the East Coast has been sitting on an Ouya for the last 2 weeks, is going to share his thoughts on that. And we have maybe a little Xbox Bone discussion to get into if we have time. But first, I want to thank this week's sponsor of the Coder Radio program, GoDaddy.com. Now, friends, here's the thing. You might have heard of GoDaddy. Or maybe you haven't heard of GoDaddy because you live under a rock. If you haven't, I should tell you, they are in fact the world's #1 domain name registrar. And they in fact love the Coder Radio program and love to help keep us on the air. So here's the great thing. You can be involved with that. Now remember, we have the fantastic Coder Radio discounts. If you're over at GoDaddy.com, use the code CODER249 to get a .com for $2.49. This is going to expire at the end of the month. So if you want to throw in there and get a .com for $2.49, take advantage of it now while you still have a chance to support the show by using that code. You can also use the code GO32OFF4 when you check out to get 32% off your whole shopping cart. If it's a new order, you got a few services in there you're going to get, and it's something like, I don't know, some hosting. Maybe it's a cert. I don't know what you're putting in your cart. I don't care. Just get yourself what you need to get the job done, and then use our code GO32OFF4 to save 32% off your entire order. So we got a great deal for your .coms, Coder249 or Go32Off4, just to take care of you overall. And thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. And don't forget, you can visit the link in our show notes to let GoDaddy know that you appreciate that you're watching our show. And thank you, everybody who uses those codes. Go use them up while they last. Okay. Ouya time. Tell me, are you going to be a curmudgeon when it comes to the Ouya?
All right, so I think a good basis for this, and again, this is a fairly casual episode, I'd say, is let's just look at the reviews that already came in from say, The Verge and ours.
The Verge had the first out-of-the-gate devastating review, in a sense.
They complained of controller lag and some input lag and some other...
Controller design, I believe, was
controller
also...
issues. So I have not experienced controller lag.
Oh, good.
I have not experienced any real input lag. I did in one game, but I feel like that was because the game was just a really crappy port from touch controls. On the controller design part, the controller looks very nice, but functionally, playing for any more than 20 minutes, the triggers are very awkward.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if the designer had really long fingers.
Oh, no.
Or the way they're laid out is just not, it's just not. I could see what they were going for, but it's definitely a form over function, form over function. It looks better than it works.
That's the #1 no-no about a controller.
It's not terrible, but there are a lot of cases where you feel like you can't get to the bottom trigger fast enough.
What's the out-of-the-box experience like? Is there a lot of configuring and setup? Do you have to pair the controller, or does it all just kind of work?
You have to pair the controller, but it's very simple. It's the same system as the Xbox. You
just kind of hold down the thing.
Yeah. Turning the console off is a little awkward. So there were cases where I thought I turned it off and it stayed on for a few hours.
Oh, yeah?
And only until the fan started spinning up loudly did I realize that, which is another issue. So if it's just on idle on the home screen, mine seems to get pretty loud.
Is there 3D graphics on the home screen or something? Something that
no,
runs the GPU?
The home screen looks a lot like a Windows 8 Metro app. It's got that new, I guess you would call it flat UI.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know exactly what is going on to make it so hot. But I mean, that's all forgivable, right? I mean,
what's the app and game purchasing experience like? What's the marketplace experience like?
Yeah, so I mean, it's understandably very bare right now. However, it's nothing jumps out at me, and more games, I would say more games than less, feel like they're the laziest possible port from Android Touch.
I was really worried about that.
It's weird because the games that I enjoy on my Nexus are the most touch optimized, feel the most broken on the Ouya. But the games where they just threw up the crappy joystick feel the best.
Huh.
I mean, Final Fantasy III is there.
Well, that looks like the best title of them all, really.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's their premier title.
And they've got the Super NES emulator on there.
Yeah, I didn't try that yet because I just didn't try that. I'm probably going to end up doing that. Now, it's $100, right? And Ice Rage is on there. Ice Rage.
Oh, and they got Vendetta Online. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not without its redeeming qualities.
And Twitch, you can watch Twitch shows on there. So they got some actual apps too, like TuneIn.
So I didn't see TuneIn. Yeah, so
It is. It's there. It's 6.6 megabytes. Huh.
yeah, I mean, I have a feeling this will be a big retro game emulator box for people.
Yeah. Or somebody who wants to play Plants vs Zombies on their TV.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it per se. There's just nothing
Compelling.
right. Why would I? I mean, yes, the emulator story is nice, right? I mean, that's pretty big. I know Pythoneer is saying Legend of Zelda, baby. And that's, I think, what a lot of people are going to do. But I think the problem is there aren't any games on there that are targeted at the Ouya in particular that take advantage of it, of its controller or anything like that. So you're getting these weird ports.
Well, that was, we were going to mention at the end of the feedback that we wanted people to send us in their moments they wanted us to return to in 52, so we'll come back to that in a minute. But I remember talking about the Ouya a long time ago that it seems like unless it has phenomenal market success, and I actually think that's one of the reasons they're pricing it so low is to just try to get crazy adoption, is otherwise you're always going to have this just ported syndrome, right? Because otherwise, as somebody who has limited time and resources, you have to write for Android and you have to write for mobile devices because that's where all of the install base is. And when the Ouya is going to be just a small percent, and perhaps even a smaller percent than maybe the second or third or fourth popular Android phone, it's always going to just kind of be a tertiary consideration.
Yeah, again, though, right? So this is pre-release. It's not out till June. Maybe they have a deal with a few developers to get really focused games. So I would say that this review is actually not bad.
Maybe. I mean, they did get some money, so maybe they can throw some money at some developers.
And let's think about where we started, where The Verge, what was that, 2 months ago? They said the controller was so laggy it didn't work.
And that's apparently already been fixed.
Right. Seems like it's been fixed. I wonder if it's not just a software patch that my unit already had, or maybe when it turned on, it patched silently or something.
Yeah. Well, so I think the idea is extremely sound, and I think the problem is that it's got to have this sort of
it needs a killer app.
It needs this push, something to drive people to go buy it. Something that says, you know what, I will spend $100 just to kind of have this. Like this is what I bought the GameCube for Metroid, right? I didn't buy a GameCube until Metroid was out, and I went to the store and I bought a GameCube and I bought Metroid the same time and I went home.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, if you think about it, people buy particularly Nintendo consoles for Mario and Zelda. And I think that's what the Ouya is going to need. It's going to need one killer app that makes the $100 unit worth buying. Remember, it's only $100. It's not an expensive unit.
Right, and if it has one killer app and then a bunch of really cool things, like, oh yeah, I can also do this, and hey, there's an XBMC plugin so you can stream a few videos to it, that kind of stuff, then I'm starting to go, okay, all right. Maybe so. And I don't know if I agree with Slips that it has to be Halo.
No, I think it can be, I think it could be the next Fez or something, or the next Super Meat Boy. I don't think it needs to be a AAA title. I just think it needs to be something that's, Ouya is going to have to get their hands dirty and make some kind of exclusivity deal. Right? You're going to need a reason to buy this unit.
I actually really like the idea of it being a smaller indie Super Meat Boy style thing, because then that would be your first sort of foundation of a community, and that would be, I think, extremely positive for that developer base.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be clear. The Ouya is still hooked up to the TV in my living room. It's not, it didn't get repackaged into the box or anything. But again, it's not launched for another couple weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if on the official launch day we come out with a bunch of games, right? I'm hoping. I mean, Chris, you might, I don't know, you might know more than me, but I'm assuming there's other games coming.
You're hoping somebody is secretly being sneaky and got something great in the works?
I'm hoping Julie Erman comes out and, oh, by the way, bam.
The only problem I see with the Ouya, really, I mean, and this is just such a huge target on its back, Apple TV, $99, already has an app store, already has an ecosystem, already has the OS, already has a huge install base. And by the way, since 2 iterations ago of the Apple TV, those things have been shipping with 8 gigabytes of local flash storage. that are just sitting there with iOS. All they need is a new Springboard, and then they can start publishing applications to the Apple TV. And all Apple has to do is turn that on, and it's $99, and that would crush the Ouya in terms of mass consumer adoption.
Yeah, I mean, Apple so far hasn't shown interest in that, but we'll see.
I would not mistake Apple's slow moving in this area to be no interest. I think they're just. I don't know why you would build the Apple TV like you have for the last 3 generations unless you intend to eventually turn on apps. Like, right? Because they're already pushing apps to them, and it really is like people have taken the Apple TV and replaced the Springboard file, and it's full on like iOS 5 something or something like that.
Well, sure, it is an iOS device.
And why go to the cost of having 8 gigabytes of unutilized, and it's even gotten bigger in the Apple TV 3. I think it's like 16 gigabytes now of unutilized space.
Well, I think there's probably reasons on multiple levels. A, they'd have to review all those apps. They'd have to come up with the new review guidelines for the Apple TV. Remember, Apple, when they review your app, doesn't just review if it crashes or not, right? They want to feel the user experience and the design language, and they want to make sure it's the same as theirs.
Picture it. We're at WWDC.
Nope.
They bring out Rovio. They bring out EA. They bring out a couple, and they say, here it is, the new Apple TV. It now runs your apps, and we've partnered with these 4 companies. They're the first to market, and we're going to be turning this on in the fall. Here's what you need to know.
Nope, Uncle Tim is never doing it.
I think it's Uncle Tim's idea. I think Uncle Tim is the guy that's been saying, let's spend the business cost. Let's take that business cost to build the capability into this device for the last 3 years. I think it's Uncle Tim and his product pipeline. I think Uncle Tim is a way better businessman than Grandpa Steve was.
Blasphemy. All right, well, let's go down this path because I think it's an interesting thought experiment, right?
Dude, they've got the iPad. You bring the 2 things together. The Apple TV could be a great little gaming platform.
That's my point. If the Apple TV tomorrow said, you know what, games on the Apple TV, that's what we're talking about with the Ouya.
Yeah.
I think XBLA, PlayStation Network, and the Ouya are all in a lot of trouble.
I don't know about the Xbox, but I think definitely things like Roku and
well, I feel like Apple would become a prime target for the next Super Meat Boy, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Particularly since I don't know anybody who's seen the Indie Games film, but they all have a bad experience with their first round in XBLA. It's weird. Apple has never cared about games, and they kind of still.
Well, no, don't see. You're thinking too narrow. It's not a games play. It's apps on the Apple TV. So CW has come out and said they're working on a CW app for the Apple TV.
HBO but those deals are tied to content deals too.
But they're apps. They're just going to be apps.
But they're not really.
Just like there's apps for. I know. Well, they are though. Technically, they are. They are technically just apps. They just are one-off apps that they have a special deal, and then Apple Hard goes into this custom Springboard.
Right.
But there's no reason they can't just turn on apps all in general as long as they're Apple TV, approved and designed. And games would just be one of the categories of apps that are now available for the Apple TV. It's going to be this huge thing where individual people, like there could be a Jupiter Broadcasting Apple TV app.
Well, if they expand the Apple TV, I think that's a game changer, and I think that's devastating for Ouya, Roku. A whole lot of even people we're not thinking about right now are going to be in some serious trouble.
And think about it. If they did it right, they could already have it to market before the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 make it to market, or maybe even the Roku if they just do it via software update to existing. They might say anything Apple TV 2 or later. Because those things have dual-core processors in them. They've got a gigabyte of RAM. They've got 16 gigabytes of storage or whatever it is. They could just say, guess what? Today you get the new Apple TV OS if you're on Apple TV 2 or later, and now you can run apps. And they literally could do it during the keynote. And they would beat everybody to market.
Maybe. That's not my WWDC bet, because here's the problem.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but they should do
it. There's a reality, though, that we kind of touched on last week, but we ran out of time in that. Apple has to do some radical things on the iPhone to not get a ton of bad ink about being stagnant and old and boring.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things is a major UI overhaul of iOS.
Well, though, keep in mind what we consider stagnant and boring, big business probably considers safe and stable.
Right, but Apple cares about what TechCrunch writes, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Apple cares more about that consumer market. mean, you could say that Tim Cook is more of a business guy than Steve was, and it's a little different, but they still care. So that overhaul of UI alone is a huge deal. There's a lot of work.
But if you're going to redo the UI, why not redo one UI that works on Apple TV and the iOS portable devices?
Because to redo the UI, they basically have to ship widgets. They need to fix notifications, right?
They could do it. They could ship widgets, and widgets on the TV would be great.
You're selling me on this. I think it's something they have to do, but I don't think they're going to do it in June. I don't think they're going to do it in WWDC.
Yeah,
I think they do it in the winter.
And I just can't really see Apple not tying it to some new piece of hardware that they could totally overcharge you for.
Just like Siri, where there was literally nothing different in the phone.
Right.
A little bit of memory, a little bit of processing error, but the S-Mint Siri.
Right. Like, really, guys? Really?
Yeah.
And remember how like the iPad 3 didn't have it at first, and then later on they pushed out an update where they just added it to the iPad 3, and it's like, well, then why don't you add it to the other stuff? I'm arguing this from a smart business industry player move, not necessarily something I think will happen. I mean, it kind of seems like it should happen, and not necessarily something I want to happen. I'd rather have Ouya come out, build up this indie development, base, and then maybe see widespread adoption go from there. Like a lot of really good technologies, like the internet, they start small with the geeks, and then they build from there. And that's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see the Ouya do that to gaming. And I just think if Apple came out and did it now, they just crush it, because in just distribution alone, I mean, they're selling, what is it, like 8-9 million of those things a quarter. So there's just no, and they're doing that now before they even turn on apps. There's just no way that Ouya could compete with that, and it's the same price point.
No, I just don't see. I mean, because here's the problem: if they don't do a major UI overhaul on the phone and the tablet, they're screwed. I mean, they're still going to make billions of dollars, but they don't want the Wall Street Journal article to be written, right? They don't want to hear that. They don't want MG Siegler to turn on them. They don't. I really think they care more about the press than you give them credit for.
No, I think you're probably right. I think, and maybe that's sort of the tragedy of their situation, is
especially because they bill themselves as the user interface, the design company.
Isn't it ironic?
Yeah.
And maybe very telling that the world's richest technology company is unable to really do more than one thing at once properly. Like they gotta, like when they, like the rumor is that they've pulled developers off of OS 10 once again to work on iOS 7. You're telling me one of the richest companies in the entire world cannot manage to develop 2 operating systems at the same time? I mean, that tells you something. I mean, maybe, and I'm not saying they're wrong. Maybe that's part of their secret sauce. But it just, to me, it is systemic in Apple that they really do only seem to be able to do one thing at a time. And so I think that probably lends itself to your argument that they're so hunkered down on trying to dig themselves out of this hole that they really can't afford to execute on the other stuff, even though right now is the perfect market opportunity.
Well, I think they understand that if they're no longer seen as the design gurus, that their prices, they're then going to have to compete on price.
Apple,
which they never want to do.
I mean, this is a cycle. Apple always does this. Apple comes along, they release something that is generally built on top of the shoulders of hundreds of other giants in the industry, but is generally bringing something new and different to the market. They change the game up, and then they fall behind. And then they don't generally pull ahead again in that category. They just create a new category.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is sort of a new circumstance where we find they're still the lead in the category, but they're sort of not the lead in innovation, a lot of people would say. I mean, so it's kind of a new position for them because they can't really just come out with something entirely new. But at the same time, they have a lot of I think the reality is I don't know, but I kind of feel like you're overstating it. I think like really they could come out and say, guess what? iOS has a new theme. See you later, everybody. And that's it. Because with the hard numbers, the reality is the install base of the iPad, the iPod, and the iPhone alone is going to continue to have people create applications first. And I'm not just saying for mobile. I'm saying they create applications first for every operating system, for the web, for computers. They all get passed over so that way people can create something for iOS first. And I think it's going to continue like that as long as they have this sort of very, very robust ecosystem where if I'm writing an app, I'm not just writing it for the iPhone. I'm not just writing it for a phone.
That's true, but here's the problem that they're facing now. You create an iOS app now, you're not tying it, more than likely not tying it into Apple's backend services. You're almost always tying it into Microsoft's or Google's.
Right, and that keeps you mobile, right? That means you can move.
Well, and that's not even the reason. Most people are doing it because it's hard to work with Apple's and because they don't work as advertised.
I know, but the result is that means I don't have that sort of lock-in. If I want to write
which is the exact opposite of what they're going for.
Exactly, yeah.
So they do.
Well, wouldn't that be the thing? Wouldn't that be funny if they just said, "Okay, here's your new skin to iOS, and by the way, everything else is all iCloud stuff."
That's what I'm hoping it is, right? Here's your skin to iOS. We've added widgets in its most minimal form. And you know what? That's it.
So this is where, okay, back to the Ouya. So, you see how when you talk about this stuff, how the Ouya is like a speck of sand on the beach in comparison to these other guys, and that's really what they're up against. And so these out-of-the-gate stuff where it's like, it's a little, controllers this, controllers that, game selections, and this, and all that. Man, that's not good to hear.
That's why I feel like they need exclusives. They need contracts where they get a game for 6 months before anybody else, or a year, or whatever. You need a reason to buy it. They need to give normal people in Walmart and Best Buy a reason to buy the Ouya.
Yeah, and like when Nintendo came out with the Cube, and then the Wii, like we all knew, like in the technology field, that we all knew, oh man, they're reusing the graphics in that one. Really, we all knew the specs, like it only does 720p. Really? That kind of stuff. It's still the Wii still sold like crazy though. And so there's like this in the console market, there's this, you can be crazy like a fox where you go cheap on purpose, but not because your product is cheap, but because you're trying to get this good, cost profit ratio. I'm wondering if the Ouya went cheap not because they were trying to strike that balance, but because they just really had to go super cheap.
I think they had to go cheap.
Because the other problem, right? I mean, let's be honest, and I don't mean to be a hater, and I don't have one yet. I have one on pre-order, and I could change my tune, but isn't it also under-spec'd hardware-wise? So on top of the other issues, market's not so great, controller's not so great.
The problem is that, yes, it is not the best spec machine. The real problem is it's $100, and the Xbox 360 is $200. And you can even get it cheaper on one of their weird deals with Xbox Live or whatever. So they really couldn't go any higher, because if they went to 150, wouldn't you just say, oh, but for $50 more, I can get a 360?
Right, and the 360's got, for a lot of people, a few killer.
And I really think they're trying to sell this to parents who are a little more price sensitive and maybe aren't gamers themselves and just the kid wants a video game system. It's $100.
I kind of think maybe they should have gone maybe more the boxy route, where it's, hey, we're a multimedia platform. We do Netflix, we do streaming stuff, and we've also got this very good games catalog. Because then you're competing with Roku.
But you're still competing with Microsoft. You're competing with Apple. I mean, that's already a crowded space.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's the problem. Everybody, and actually this segues nicely into our next topic. Everybody. What did I say 20 episodes ago, that the fight for mobile is coming to an end, and now it's all about the living room?
Yeah.
We're taking everything we've learned on mobile, and we're going right into your living room. Everybody wants to be not your cell phone platform now. They want to be your whole entertainment platform.
Right, and nobody's really locked it down yet.
They want to be the one box. They want to be the one. The first input. I got more. Hang on. The input one.
Oh, no.
The one controller you use.
I don't know about this. This is going in a bad direction.
The one X to rule them all.
Hello, Xbox One. Kind of a big box, isn't it? A big box. So what do you think? What do you think?
I was very happy to see ample ventilation on the box.
Yeah, that is true. I had a red ring from my... Man,
I had 4.
Mine red ringed at the worst time too. I got a brand new Star Trek game. Oh gosh.
I was watching it with a buddy of mine. First thing I'm like, ooh, look at all the vents. That's good. Thanks.
Yeah. They don't want that problem again.
So I'll be honest. I'm of two minds of the Xbox One. When I first watched the presentation, I was a little more than disappointed. But as I've kind of thought about it and really examined how I use my current devices, I think I'm the target audience. Because really, I use an Xbox as a Roku box.
Okay.
And maybe play an hour of games a week.
I think that's getting more and more common.
Yeah, I mean, when I get most of my gaming is honestly on my tablets.
Yeah, yeah, I do it mostly on my PC.
Or in a browser, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, some of it, and I don't think we need to go because IGN and everybody else has written up the specs, so you can go check it out. What's interesting is that the hardware is painfully similar to the PS4.
Yeah.
To the point of, I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, which not too surprising.
Yeah, I think Sony learned their lesson.
And Microsoft, they were doing their PowerPC in the current iteration too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true. They were running G5s, right?
Yeah.
Where their kits, yeah.
Which is funny because the Xbox One, the first Xbox.
Yep, here we go.
Yep, was an i386 chip. It was an Intel chip, right?
So, it was a WinNT kernel, right?
Yeah, and I think it was only 700 megahertz or something like that.
So what's really interesting about this box to me is that they're all the hypervisor stuff that they have going on.
Yeah, it's running 3 operating systems.
Yeah, presumably through virtualization.
Yeah, I think they actually said it is a new. They took Windows Server Core, stripped it all down to just the bare bits of Hyper-V, wrote in a bunch of different stuff they needed just for this, and created a new fork of the Win8 Hyper-V, whatever they call it, and that's what's running on this. And so there's literally a games operating system, a multimedia operating systems, and the dashboard operating system or something. That doesn't sound complicated at all. That's not going to ever break, I'm sure. Or one crashes, one OS locks up. And
one crash to rule them all. One crashed.
Who is the master operating system? Gosh, I don't want to derail you, but is there anything that got you interested from a developer side of this? I mean, to me, that was the least played up aspect.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, honestly, if it weren't for EA jumping up and being really weird about sports, and Activision showing me a Call of Duty game that looks a lot like the current Call of Duty game
with a dog.
Hey, don't knock on the dog there.
No, I like it. I'm just saying that was pretty much the change, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, they said there's a different engine, but I couldn't tell. I mean, it looked awfully similar.
Yeah.
Not really, right? They said they'd talk about it at E3. I mean, I would say their conference, when contrasted with Sony's, you would almost feel like they don't consider each other competition.
So this is what I wanted to get to. I do not believe the Xbox One is really competing with Sony. I believe the Xbox One is Microsoft competing with Google. These are long-term consoles. Microsoft knows this. Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Google TV. Okay.
No. Everything Google. Absolutely everything Google. Everything Google does, from ads to search, the Xbox One is designed to compete with. So let's start with search. Obviously, having Bing built into your living room is going to drive more people to search. Let's start with data point metrics. That's what Google loves. The HDMI pass-through and the guide system will track and monitor what shows you watch, what shows you record when you watch them. They have patents that they can combine that with the Kinect to see how many people are in the room while they're watching the TV show. And they've even said in the keynote that they can measure your emotional response to what you're seeing on the TV based on what the Kinect 2 now can see into your body, on your heart rate and all those kinds of things.
All right, well,
those are all data metrics that they can anonymize and sell. So these are data metrics that Google can never get. I believe this is truly competing with Google. And it also sells all of their multimedia platforms that Google's trying to compete with and play. This is totally a Microsoft versus Google.
Does Google have an install base in the entertainment? I mean, I know they just launched a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. That's my point. See, Google's dominating metrics all over the web. They're dominating analytics. They're dominating ads. Google owns the web. Microsoft has an opportunity to dominate living room metrics. Advertisers would kill for that kind of information.
But let's just pump the brakes. I mean, I remember the first Kinect reveal, and the product I got is not exactly what they said, right?
True.
So all this stuff about monitoring my emotions,
I don't mean to make it sound bad, because I mean it's creepy.
So I
but
think it would be great, actually, because if let's say I'm playing the next Resident Evil, and if I'm not intimidated or nervous or scared, I wish the game would maybe darken the screen or hell, throw a zombie at me.
Oh yeah.
So I think that would be epic. I would like that to work properly.
That would
Obviously, I want the privacy controls in place like everybody else. I'm not saying anything creepy. Obviously, there needs to be an off button.
Well, yeah. Well, so the great thing would be if the Kinect, if you can just unplug the USB cord from the back of it, and that solves the problem. Now, in this Xbox, the Kinect is always on, so that way you can turn the Xbox on via voice command.
So that I had a question about. So the Kinect is in fact in the box, correct?
No, it is a separate piece of hardware.
Right, but you get it with it.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing conflicting articles. Some say if you unplug the Kinect, the device doesn't work.
Correct. Microsoft did say that the
so
Xbox,
everyone has a Kinect.
It will not function if the Kinect is not on.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and this is so, and I'm not being a total conspiracy. They have Microsoft has patents on emotion-based ads where they will monitor. On June 7th of last year, they were awarded the patent where the company said that they're going to monitor via targeted advertisement based on your emotions. They say they will anonymize who you are, although they know, but they won't tell the advertiser. And they will generate the ads based on your feelings. Could you imagine how much Google would love to have that? Right?
I wouldn't be shocked if Google already has something like that.
You know, we've noticed they're browsing a lot of porn. Maybe you should give them this ad.
Well then.
Right? Because, I mean, Google does know, Google tracks where you go across the different sites.
All right.
So it's Microsoft's play.
Okay, so I just want to go down this road with you because I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. So you think they're going to compete on ads?
Hmm?
So they're going to compete on ads?
Yeah.
All right, well, Google's, I mean, that's where they make all their money now, but they're obviously moving into a lot of sectors. Google's becoming a lot more developer-friendly. Particularly, a lot of Google I/O is about monetizing the Chrome Web Store, the Android App Store. Are you suggesting that they're somehow switching places?
Yeah, only I think Microsoft's being way sneakier about it because they're not really... Google, even though they don't come out and say, hey, we track you and sell ads, everybody knows that's the game. Everybody thinks of Microsoft as the Windows and Office people, but the reality is the Windows sales are dropping way off because people are being able to just use the browser to do a lot of stuff. Right. But Microsoft, Ballmer is all about recurring revenue. That's why the board loves him, because Microsoft is a services company. Well, ads are a type of service they're selling. And the other thing they have is a Kinect patent, and that maybe they'll never use this, but they have a patent that says when you start a movie, the Kinect can verify how many people are in the room and charge you a pay-per-view fee based on the amount of people in the room.
So you want to know what I think of this patent, to be honest with you?
Maybe never going to use it, but I'm saying they have
just something to have in case Google or Apple does that.
But don't you think it shows an interesting way they can kind of this is a big tie-in. I mean, and all this stuff is associated with your Microsoft ID that you also log into Windows 8 with.
Here's the problem. If they do that, I think they know it's such a bad PR move.
I think I would not be surprised if, at least with the advertising part, if the Xbox One doesn't just roll out with it.
I don't see that. I mean, I guess that might roll into what you think these devices are going to cost as well. Now, we had originally talked about a potential subsidized deal, which is probably not going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of reports. I think even Paul Thurrott himself reported that they've scrapped that idea. So it's probably going to be a $500 box. $60 games. Maybe. I mean, you could be right.
It'll probably be $500 once you got your controllers and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, you could be right. I mean, I think there's a lot more real immediate issues that might be worth talking about.
Okay.
That are less theoretical. For instance, if you have two people in your house like we do here that have separate Xbox accounts, let's say I buy a game, can Laura not play it without paying $10? I mean, these are to me more...
And I guess they're really kind of there's gonna be a license transfer process for resells, and Microsoft's actually gonna get like a kick on every used game that's sold from like GameStops and stuff.
Yeah, and what's really telling is that Sony was then asked by I think IGN about what they were doing, and they won't comment on it. So
I think indeed like license keys, like games are gonna come with license keys.
I think that's what it is, and they're gonna activate to your either PlayStation or Windows account, or I guess Microsoft account.
Does not want.
That's so. As a developer, I kind of like it.
I can see that because, I can see that.
I would go one more step towards being liberal. I would say maybe, unlimited accounts on the original device can use it. But then if you want to go to different devices, it has to be the right account.
It would be better if it was tied to a box. It has to be because these are family shared devices.
That's where we get into trouble. But I kind of see, when you sell a game to GameStop and they resell it, the publisher and the developer get no money off that second sale.
Well, yeah, but they got money off the first sale.
But when the new player logs into the game, creates an account, plays it, they're using server resources.
But the person who sold it to them no longer is. And I guess I equate it to like if I have a garage sale and I sell an iPad, Apple doesn't get a cut of that either.
But you're not really using Apple's system, and Apple does get a cut of that, by the way. Because every time you use an Apple service, they take 30%.
Yeah, and anything anybody buys through a DLC or anything like that, they take 1%. I don't know. I seems a little greedy.
I guess they do. So the question is this about used games or piracy? If it's about piracy, I think it's another desperate move.
Yeah.
Right? Another failed DRM attempt. If it's about used game, how do they get GameStop to go along with this? Because that's going to devastate them.
They're just going to have to through the activation process. How do they get them to kick them the 30 or the 10% or whatever it is?
How do they get them to agree to this, right?
Right.
Or is it something where all the publishers sat down and that if GameStop says no, they simply are out of business?
Maybe this is why there's still physical media slot. Maybe they were like, all right, we'll come to a deal. If you don't want us to go all digital, let's work something out here. Because if they went all digital, then it's all profit for Microsoft.
Maybe, and we should be clear that there have been conflicting leaks, conflicting messages.
Yeah.
So there's also been the message that no, used games will be fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, that could indicate there's been negotiations going on back and forth.
Right. I mean, at some level, I understand the developer's frustration here, especially in these multiplayer games. But there is a risk of being far too draconian, right?
Yeah. And just making it extremely inconvenient for the user. I mean, the console experience is really about pop and play, right? You pop in the disc, you sit down and you play. If I wanted to do activation codes and all that stuff, like I was not happy when I realized the PlayStation 3 actually installs games. I was like, are you serious? I come from the cartridge days where I pop in the cartridge and I play. If I want to install and do license codes, why the hell am I not just playing on the PC?
So the install thing, there's actually a number of technical reasons that it could be better. For instance, speed.
Oh no, I know. Oh yeah, no, I know why. It just to me it seems like now you're getting into the PC territory. Now, do you suppose I didn't see? So they really didn't talk at all about like an app store for this thing. But if it's got this dashboard like UI, it would be really cool if they would let developers release.
And they didn't discuss it, which is interesting.
Wouldn't it be cool if you could even build stuff around TV, like a Twitter app for TV that lets you get involved in Twitter conversations for the show you're watching and stuff like that?
So the thing is, I feel like if they had that, they would either show it at the end of the month at Build, which is their developer conference.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, has an Xbox logo on the marketing material now.
Oh, dude, they're going to be milking this thing for weeks. They're going to talk about it at E3.
That's still a possibility. There have been some reports that they're not going to have a self-publishing model like iOS or even PS4. So we really don't know where they're going with it. I have a feeling they don't know, to be honest with you.
Maybe they're still figuring it out.
Because even Sony hasn't been 100% transparent. They're going to allow self-publishing ...
But don't you think it's interesting? I mean, I think Microsoft showed off a lot more actual like device functionality. They actually showed a device. I bet the Xbox One might be making it to market first.
Well, I think, I would be very surprised if it didn't. I also feel like Sony had to kind of do a mea culpa for the PS3, particularly for the developer story on the PS3.
Yeah.
And so that's why they did so much pandering.
Maybe so, yeah.
Now, that's not to say that either system's... I mean, to be honest, I'm really concerned about first generation off the line on both of these consoles. Sony's track record with network security is questionable at best. And Microsoft's off-the-line hardware can be a little touch and go.
How do you feel about the focus on TV? Does that interest you at all?
Actually, yes. So I just subscribed to HBO. I'm That's what I'm saying. I'm probably a target audience for this.
Okay.
I'm not interested in the sports stuff to any serious degree.
Right.
But if they could do some HBO integration, I'd probably be interested.
Yeah, I find the TV stuff is going to be quaint, I think, in 5 years. That's what I think. But we'll see. I hope.
Yeah, I think it's backward, right? I mean, the internet's going to get rid of a lot of these cable companies and turn them into dumb pipes eventually.
Right. HDMI pass-through will be like, well, like in the next generation of consoles, it'll be like this old legacy thing that the last Xbox did. Like HDMI pass-through, really? Why aren't you just pulling it all over Ethernet? Right? I mean, I hope that by the time this console's about midway through its life, I hope that functionality of it looks kind of pathetic. And I think that's sort of telling that they focus so much on that, but I think it's because we're going to be hearing about a lot more. I'm hoping at E3 we're going to hear a ton about the indie development stuff.
Well, I think it's also important to note that it's unlikely that Sony has similar deals with the NFL or the cable companies.
Right.
So I think for them, that's their big differentiator. They're like, we made these deals that are very U.S. focused that Sony can't get. And let's be real, the Xbox doesn't do well in Japan. So
I wonder if the HDMI pass-through will work for hooking up the old Xbox. I wonder if you can hook up the old Xbox through the new Xbox.
I'm sure you can't.
Well, all right. So you're gonna buy one then?
No, I want to see E3.
Really? You're not sold yet?
Well, how could I be sold? I don't have a date. I don't have a price.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an open mind still. I
wonder if we're going to see more Windows Phone, Windows RT integration.
So that's what I wanted to see, and I didn't see.
They showed scrolling using a Windows Phone. And they mentioned glass, like they threw glass up on the screen for a minute. Another
they didn't say that. They didn't say exactly what you can do with glass, right?
Right.
With smart glasses. So I'm hoping that's all at E3 and build. I'm also eager to see what Sony's got going, especially, more details about Sony's indie developer program would be really interesting. Because it's weird. They came out and said, there's a place for you. Talk to us later.
Yeah.
Oh, but we're already talking to these, to these well-known indies, and we have been talking to them for a while. So it's...
Hey, Sony, you're going to keep working with Valve and Steam? No comment. Uh-oh.
Yeah, no comment is pretty much the no of this generation already.
Yeah. Which is too bad.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's for sure is these consoles are going to last 8+ years. So get used to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pick a platform or both.
I guess that's just kind of why it's gonna kind of burn my hide a little bit if you've got 3 operating systems and they're each individually sandboxed, could you roll the dice and let indie developers write applications and just say, hey, if you crash the VM, we restart that VM and the console moves on? Because if you're gonna have a 8 to 10 year product, and really, maybe it's more like they're 10-year products because the old consoles continue to sell very well for about 2 years after the new console comes out.
Yeah.
Again, that killer app thing, right? Going back to the Ouya conversation. And so if you don't get it in, you're going to wait about another 10 years before you're going to get it in. And that is a damn shame.
So I think that's a patch. I mean,
you think they could just do like a big conference and say, we're updating with a whole new dashboard with indie games? Maybe.
I think they could. I
guess when you look back at the Xbox 360, I don't even know if it shipped with Netflix, did it?
No. In this day and age, they can't not have indie games. Neither of them can. But you can not have things at launch, right? I mean, it's going to... We're going to have to see, because the other thing is Sony talked about concepts but didn't really show you anything.
Not even a box.
Right. Microsoft showed you what they wanted to show you, and they didn't want to answer any of the questions. And I think it's likely that they're playing this weird game where they're afraid, if one's afraid if they answer a question, the other will hear the answer and be able to adjust their strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess when I think about it, I feel like Microsoft still has a lot more to show us, and I feel like Sony showed us everything they got so far.
I do feel like there's not going to be a surprise from Sony.
Other than the design, the case.
But it's going to be a black box.
Right. But I think they took all the cards they have and played them. Maybe I could be wrong, but that's my impression. And I think Microsoft's going to once again get a jump on them, and that's really all it sometimes takes. That's what they say.
I don't know. It should be an interesting E3, and I get the sense that I'm curious as to what they're going to talk about at Build.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll cover that.
That's a pure developer conference. Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, we should have said it way earlier in the show, so hopefully people will remember. But next week will be episode 52 of the Coder Radio program, and we were thinking we might look back at a few of our, I don't know, predictions, moments in the show where we maybe need to touch on them again and revisit that topic, either if we were wrong or right. And we'd love to hear your suggestions for that, because honestly, they're all blur. I don't remember any of them. I can't even remember what we talked about last week half the time. So email us, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or pop that contact link at the top of our website, or start a thread in our subreddit, coderradio.reddit.com. That'd be the best. And time codes would be very handy, because if you give me a time code, I might be able to go get a clip. Mr. Dominic, where should people find you throughout the week?
You can find me at Twitter @Dumanuko.
Oh, very easy. We'll also have links to his blog and his Google Plus profile. Don't forget, Coder Radio is live Mondays, 9 a.m., noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv, and then available for download shortly after that. If you like the show, please help support us by giving us a rating, giving us a review in the iTunes store. That helps out a bunch. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you right back here next week.